There's no such thing in veterinary medicine as an average practice, right? I mean, there's an incredible diversity of practices. The one thing about the veterinary profession is it is extremely diverse in those practices. You have different types of practices, so you may have a mixed animal, food animal, equine, companion, but even within the companion animal practice, you may have somebody that's 50-50 canine and feline. You may have somebody that's a specialty practice. You may have somebody that does 20 or 30% birds and pocket pets, right? So there's so much diversity just in the practice type, and then you have a different set of clientele for every practice, right? What's the demographics of your customer base? What's the culture of that practice? Consider a group that might be more rural, where most of the animals sleep outside as compared to a suburban where most of the animals sleep in a bedroom. That's a totally different clientele. And then on top of that, you have different practice focuses. So where one practice may focus 90% of its business on wellness, another one may have 50% surgery or 20% imagery. So how that revenue is distributed across that varies significantly. So if I come up with an average set of KPIs, which one of those practices does that apply to, right? So we need to have a standard a standard way of collecting information, putting it into our cost accounting software to create the revenue centers and the cost centers, so that when we aggregate it, we can compare across all practices. And then in order to do that, we have to adjust for those regional differences, for those practice type differences, for that focus difference. So we can come up with KPIs that actually can be adjusted for each one of those situations. And so we haven't done that, right? And so when we put out KPIs, I don't know who that applies to, right? I mean, I don't know what practices went in to form that KPI. And does my practice, which practice in that group of, say, 200 or 400 or 500, which group of practices are those, and what do they look like compared to what my practice looks like? So I think that's what we're getting at, is a set of standardization. So we can come up with a set of KPIs and a set of adjustment factors of those, so every practice can kind of know where they are and look and say, is there something different about my practice that causes my cost of goods sold or my labor percent of total revenue, or something in my practice to be different than those KPIs might suggest? And if it isn't, what should I do to fix it? So that's the idea. That's the whole idea. And it's, of course, we're right at the bottom now, trying to say, okay, let's first of all get everybody to have the same way of aggregating all the expenses and all the revenues in their practice, so we can start to compare practices.